in a blink of an eye. Basically, we got our kind of first proposal out to a team, the Female Football Nutrition Network, and then they were in part of the proposal was if they agree it in time, like I would go over to Marbella for a few days while they're on camp, and then they kind of emailed on the Tuesday, and then I was on a flight on the Thursday morning at like 6 a.m. Yeah,
Wow.
so then where your schedule just is completely thrown in the bin, to be honest. But no, it was really good. It was like going back 5 years when I first started as an intern at United, where we had, skeleton staff, small budget. There was no egos. Do you know what I mean? They were
Yeah,
just nothing. It
like
has
pure. It was like
big
pure
enough,
fun,
yeah,
is what they were
pure.
doing.
And
Yeah,
Norwegian people they're so friendly and so lovely. So it was actually like really refreshing to like step back in time. That's what I felt I was doing. And you really felt like you were actually making an impact because they were just so happy that
yeah,
you were having a
grateful for
conversation
it.
with them. Yeah. So I was like, oh, like proper worth the trip. It was really good.
So that segues quite nicely into getting started. You mentioned that going back 5 years to when you was an intern, things like that. So obviously, I know you quite well. So maybe a bit of an introduction as to what you do now. I know there's a plethora of things, so you can obviously condense it if you want, but go through that rap sheet of all the cool things you're doing at the minute, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So background wise, I kind of go way back. So yeah, like my passion and love is football. Played it since I was a kid. So I've always been that sporty kid playing with the lads when I was younger. And yeah, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be involved in sport all my life, just because that's what I felt comfortable in. So then went to uni, graduated. Then I was like, actually worked in public health for a little while with like overweight children, overweight families and the children, and then done that for a year. And I was like, I just want to be my own boss. I want to be a coach. I was in the CrossFit rabbit hole way back then, and then I was PT, and then from there probably took 7 years out, and then I was like, okay. I started working with like a female footballer from Liverpool at the Liverpool Girls, who at the time was maybe like 13. Again, still didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, and she had an injury to her back, and then she was out for like a whole year, more or less a whole season. Sorry, and then I was thinking, why is this kid not like getting back on the pitch? And she was like your typical tall, gangly, done every sport under the sun. And then we used to talk about like I used to see her every Friday. She used to go and get a Chinese afterwards, and we used to talk about food a lot. And then I was like, I wonder if it is related to the lack of food or too much exercise. And then I reached out to, I know you know him, Steve Heaton, who owns Kinetic Therapy, and we had a mutual. He was the mutual friend. So like Graham Close, Professor Graham Close is Steve's best friend, and Steve was like, okay, I'll put you in contact. I'm sure he'll have a conversation at least. So ended up going round to Graham's house in Newtonley Willows. There was rugby on, which I at the time was not one bit interested in, to be
Alien
honest.
concept to you.
No, wasn't even watching it. And then he just explained about it was a pars stress fracture to the back, which is a common injury in teenage boys and girls where basically their expenditure is outweighing their intake. So it's like an imbalance, and it impacts their bone health, bone strength, bone density. So and I was like, oh, that is so interesting. And then from there, I was like, how do I get on the master's course then? Because I want to
Yeah, yeah.
learn. And then that's where the kind of passion started. And then it wasn't until 2019 went back to uni. That was a shock to the system. Hadn't referenced or typed anything on a laptop for years and years. So safe to say that first assignment was pretty rubbish, to be honest. I was
Hard.
like, oh, God. Yeah. But then was provided with the opportunity to do a placement, which is where the story of, Man United women started. And I actually wasn't going to go. So really funny story. So I accepted a placement with Dr. Carl Langan Evans, who works in combat sport athletes. And it was to support the students who were attending John Moores as part of the uni course. So some of them were footballers, some of them were taekwondo athletes. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty interesting. And then there was an opportunity at Man United Women. And I was just like, oh, I'm working. I've got one placement. I've got studying. I just don't think I can take another one. So I said, I can't do it. I said I haven't got time at the time. And then actually Graham Close messaged me back because like, oh, I'm just not sure. And he just messaged, not even hi, not even bye. It was just, nothing is impossible. It's like, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go to this interview. So went to, like the following week, I can't remember what it was, spent a day at Man United. It was at Lee Sports Village. Yeah, it was myself and a lad from my class. And basically, we had to kind of just make a good impression. And then the girls voted at the end of the day who they wanted to be their nutritionist, which
Fucking
was
hell.
wild.
Brutal.
So obviously, they voted for me, which I was obviously super grateful for. I had to, like a presentation, like this is my life. Oh my God, yeah, it was tough.
Fucking
And then
wild
yeah,
that there is just like, right,
it was like
picking
show hands. Like
Lord of the
they did
Flies.
allow us to go out the room. Like when it was a show hands, I was like, I can't stand in the room. And then yeah, literally that's where I started on a placement. And I think one of the big pieces of advice I can give anyone who's like starting out, whether you're a practitioner or you're not even involved in sport, but I just treated that like voluntary opportunity as a full-time job. I was like, I'm just going all in. And I'd like to say it paid off because in the end, it finished because of COVID, but then I went back, paid 1 day a week, and then that turned into a full-time contract. Um, yeah, I was then the first ever full-time nutritionist in the WSL, which was crazy at the time, going back to like 2021.
I think it's quite recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then obviously now there's so many other full-time nutritionists, but like it was good to see the club make a statement and see the importance of it. And then, yeah, now I'm across many sports and I've stepped
Yeah,
into the world of rugby.
yeah, I remember that, and sort of, I was like, that's mad, because sort of from going from one literal extreme of football to the other with rugby, because that was chalk and cheese, aren't there? And I can imagine for you, being from Liverpool, where rugby is this alien concept at the best of times, it must have been such a bizarre transition. What was that like though, for sort of getting that opportunity and then obviously wait off and be like, you don't really have any experience with rugby, but you've got arguably one of the biggest opportunities in women's rugby. Was that sort of a conflicting thing for you to be like, oh God, do I do it? Do I not?
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I know we all get stuck at times in like our comfort bubble and what we feel safe in. And I was in a full-time role. I had committed nutrition, my business on the side. It was just ticking over, like, wasn't really putting any energy into it. And I was like, oh, like, I love football. Like, I just don't think I can leave. And then I actually nearly stayed. Like, I was honestly so close. And then I thought, you know what? No, like, I don't want to be a one trick pony. I want to work with females in another team sport. And I guess it was just another challenge where, again, built United up to an amazing place with the help of everyone else. But then it was like going back again because they didn't have as big a budget, but there was the opportunity to build, which I think that's all I've ever known with a role. I've like gone backwards to build it,
Yeah, yeah.
in a way. But yeah, I was completely open and honest with the girls, with the staff, and I just said from day one, I'm not going to pretend that I know what the hell is going on. Like, I'm going to try my best to learn it, and I'm still learning because there's 41 million rules.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I just thought, if I try and pretend that I understand the lingo and just, how it works, I'm just going to get found out. So I just like, listen, don't know what you're talking about, but
yeah. Union's so complicated as well. Like I'm a league boy, and union
yeah,
blows my mind sometimes. But I mean, didn't you go to New Zealand with them, or you went like down under, didn't you?
yeah, literally my first day was the day I landed in Auckland, I think. Yeah. And that was mad, like just walking straight into a tournament, having never really met anyone except for my line manager who done my interview.
Yeah,
So that was interesting. It was amazing. But you were kind of like, I was just advised to go and make notes and just assess the environment. But it's so hard to, like, when you're there, you're like, well, you got to muck in, like
yeah,
you've got to. So if there's some things that I may have seen that were easily impacted without me being like, let's change this. It's like, oh, there's a few small wins here, but no, it was baptism of fire, but I think that's the best way.
Definitely, sometimes it's the best way, isn't it? And what was the sort of, just obviously, the culture differences like? What was that like to sort of navigate between football and rugby? Was there a culture difference?
Yeah, I do think there is. I think there's definitely more of a social culture. Yeah, it took me by surprise. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know whether at United it was just a bit unique where no one really had a drink in terms of like, yes, when there was a team night out, people would have a drink, but when you're traveling to away games, like, there was never like a drink in a hotel bar with the staff or
yeah,
anything like that. Whereas touchdown in New Zealand, and it was like staff, like always got a WhatsApp, staff meeting in the bar at 8:30. I was like, wow, I'll have to go because
yeah.
it'd be weird if I don't. It's safe to say there was too many bottles of wine that was drunk on that day.
It's a good way of getting to know people, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I
But I was like,
suppose
I
it was nice.
can't carry this on because how do people get up in the morning?
Some rugby players are just built different, like
They
men and
are,
women.
they are, they are. You've hit the nail on the head. But I was expecting like, I don't know, like all the players will be getting drunk after the game and things like that. But it's actually not like that. There's alcohol in the changing room. Some people don't touch it. Some people might have one cider or one beer, and then that's that. But then obviously when the reins are off,
Yeah,
wow,
it's a different kettle of fish. So,
yeah.
sort of going back to when you touched down, and you sort of was in there, just sort of assessing what was going on. What's it like to go into these elite environments, and because there's obviously some pressure on you to, provide them with something and deliver that. And how do you compute that in your mind and be like, right, I've got to sort of do something here? Is there a lot of pressure that comes with that?
Yeah, I guess to a degree because there is an expectation now that I'm in that food is going to be better on all fronts straight away.
Mm,
That people want instant gratification, don't they? And I think with nutrition, yes, you can change things and you can change things overnight, but some things are just a longer process. So yeah, I just think I just had an approach of what can I easily impact? Like, what is the most important to impact, and how can I do it and communicate it in a way that they like I'm not just putting things on.
yeah,
So they always need to know the why. That was one thing I learned pretty quickly. Like it's always like, oh, why is there a dessert? Whereas could put a dessert on every single day because culturally footballers don't really eat enough. Whereas culturally in rugby, at times rugby
can be
players
too
eat too
much.
much.
Yeah,
So I learned really quickly that if I was to put a dessert on, I couldn't do it as much. And if I did, it would have to be like mini versions. But then, yeah, I just like had that approach for that 4 weeks that I was in New Zealand, just like, what can I impact and what's going to make the big difference? And it was like um, something simple of like just having bagels at breakfast on harder training days,
yeah,
having more fruit juice on harder training days, putting a dessert on a match day -1 so it's just like little things that would also win people over because I needed to make friends.
yeah. So I was speaking to Kate, who I had on, she's worked with like rugby union teams and things like that. And would it be fair to say that, people sort of expect athletes to have this education around nutrition and just sort of know what's going on? That doesn't always seem to be the case, does it?
No, absolutely not. And I think yeah, and the education, it had education because actually, funny enough, my business partner now, James Moorhen, he was a contractor with the Red Roses before I came in, but he was only, maybe 1 day a week on camp, which what can you really
Yeah,
do 1 day a week? So obviously I came in being able to be on camp all the time. And I did realize like, wow, there's actually a big curriculum here that we need to carry out. But what are the biggest rocks that are the most important right now? And yet you should never just assume that, yes, athletes have a degree of education because they wouldn't be
there they are.
where they are. But yeah, don't be naive enough to think that they'll just know that they need to have a protein shake after training, or they'll just know that they need to have more carbs on a harder day, because what they know and what they actually do, there's always like a, you know, a difference between what
Yeah.
actually happens. So yeah, the education is lower than you expect. And that is something that when I went over to Norway, at Marbella with the Norwegian team last week, is they have had no education. And I think the difference between men's sport and women's sport is rugby, football with the men's, like there is, an academy system where they will get drip fed education over the years from like when they're 12. Whereas, you're talking these Red Roses girls now, they haven't been in an academy system since they were 12. So who's been educating them?
Yeah.
Same with the Norwegian girls when I was away. They've not even been professional for that long. So some of them don't even know what
Yeah.
professional means.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
had no, and I mean no education, and it really did open my eyes when I was over there. So it is just never just assume that athletes know. They probably get away with it because of the athlete that they are,
Yeah.
and
The
they're
talent and the sort of
yeah, yeah,
It's mad to think because obviously you've just explained it there, and when you think about it, like the academy systems and things. I had a meeting the other week at work, and we was speaking to like a ex-prem footballer, and he was talking to my manager, and my manager was talking about one of his sons who's in like I think it was like Blackburn, and because they're a Cat One academy, like they have to do like sports psychology at like 12 years old and like assess what they're doing, and that's obviously lads, and then that doesn't. I wasn't aware, but obviously like you're saying, it doesn't really transfer into the women's game, so
no.
it's obviously where you're sort of another side venture that you've got going on. Is that sort of the inspiration where the female football sort of business model you've got now came from?
Yeah, and yeah, exactly that really, because I've been lucky enough to be at one of the biggest brands in the world in football, and also internationally now with rugby. And even though it's football specific, when I was at United, I was thinking, wow, the education here is, not very much, and this is top, like
Yeah,
one of the top in the world. So imagine what a championship team, imagine what you know northern leagues and grassroots. Like, of course, there's never going to be enough resource or finances to provide for anyone to have a full-time nutritionist. It's just not real life, even though there is more money being pumped in everywhere. But I was like, wow, like it was James Moorhen's idea, and he was like, do you think this has got legs? Like we could provide a community where, we can reach as many people in the world to try and improve performance nutrition for footballers. And I was like, yeah, surely,
supply and
surely
demand,
this
isn't
is,
it?
yeah, exactly. And I think with that, like, it's such a simple idea, and we were like, why has no one ever done it before? And I think many people have probably had the idea, but no one's ran with it, and we've ran with it. Took a chance, and it's paid off with. And I'll be completely honest with this, like, we targeted grassroots at the start, and it's been a bit of a slow burner. But what I would say is, we've got grassroots players in the community, amazing parents and nutritionists actually as well. I think what we need to target are the likes of your brand from Norway, maybe your championship clubs who don't have a nutritionist.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, like all over the world, because that type of athlete cares more. Whereas grassroots, it is a lot of the time. Yes, you have some players within the team who take it really serious, but is someone going to
it's a
pay?
hobby, isn't it, at that level?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think we just kind of maybe targeted to the not the wrong like people, but we now have learned we can do that,
and
and
some.
then yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned, like you said, although it is for football, I think you sort of alluding that it can sort of transfer across anything, can it?
yeah, and like who's to say that we won't do a female rugby nutrition network? I think
Yeah,
it's the World Cup year this year. There's going to be more eyes on the sport. You know, the expectation is for England Red Roses to win the World Cup, and I think if you look at the success of the Lionesses and how that's changed female football forever, like that is what can happen this year, but maybe a slower, trajectory just because of the financial
yeah.
differences between the two sports.
It's them catalyst moments, isn't it, of where you just sort of, they happen and then the trajectory just sort of snowballs and gets bigger. And we mentioned well, you mentioned about working with, athletes and stuff, and sometimes the talent gets them through, and sort of mask some of the things, and that's where you come in, and these other professionals come in. But I'm sort of interested to see, is there any common traits that you've seen among high performers in different aspects of the sports you've worked in?
Really good question. I would say, with me working primarily with female athletes, I feel during my time like working in these sports is that they have got a thirst for education, they've got a thirst for development, they've got a thirst to get better, and it's not just handed to them on a plate. So I think that's being like the difference for me, and like the traits between a academy racing car driver to a Red Rose to a Man United player is, in my experience, they've always wanted more and asked
Yeah,
questions and been so inquisitive. So I just think they've wanted to be coached,
yeah.
which, God, that's half the battle. If you want someone that's asking questions about nutrition, and then wow,
Always
you
be a
start.
student sort of mentality.
Yeah, and it's not every single person, but I would say it's definitely weighted more towards female athletes that, like, I'm not saying they care more. That's probably the wrong way, but they
There's more of a desire, maybe.
100%. And I think, is it because they've not had that academy system drip fed? Is it because money hasn't negatively changed who they are yet
Mm.
as well? Because I've spoke to a few people who work in like men's academies, men's sports and stuff, and you know they have said, yeah, you'll tell a lad something, and it's just, yeah, and it's never like a why.
Mm.
So I think that is, for me, that's the
Sort of
difference.
like, yeah, they don't appreciate maybe the additions that you're adding to the game, or how you're making
Yeah,
them better. They just again go and rely on that talent that they may have that's got them. Like you mentioned about academy drivers, and this is one that I wanted to ask you about because Williams is a mental opportunity going from like football, rugby, and then like race car driving. So how was that opportunity, and how did that come about?
yeah, and do you know what? It came out of nowhere, and that's probably a really annoying comment to make for someone that wants to work in the sport. So I don't mean that in a disrespectful
No,
way
no,
at all.
yeah.
But it was last June or July, and there's a guy called David Dunn, who's a lovely Irish guy who owns a company called Hexus, which is like an AI, um, I guess, food tracking technology software. And we go back years, just in, I've used the app, I've tried it with athletes, and he's kind of someone I look up to in the nutrition space. And he just texted me one day and was like, do you have one day a month free? And I was like, like, I could. And he was like, there is a potential opportunity at Williams Racing to provide nutrition support for the academy drivers. I was like, oh, I don't know, I've not worked in that. And he's like, oh, I'll put you in contact with a guy called Patrick, who's head of the academy, but also he's the performance coach for Alex Albon. I think
Mhm.
I've said that
Yeah,
right. Who's the number one driver? Well, I don't know whether he's number one now because Carlos Sainz came in, but so we had a conversation, and it wasn't like an interview; it was just a Zoom, chatted, and then went really well. And then he was like, "Oh, there's actually another role coming out." And to be honest, like, I'd rather offer it to you first, and it's to provide nutrition support for the pit stop crew. And I was like, wow, that is mental. Like, didn't even know that even existed.
yeah.
We explained why, and he explained the context. And I was like, yeah, like 100%. Like, let's just do it. So again, like, spent the first, God, I'm still obviously learning it now, but I was like into the research into Google, like looking at what pit stop crew is, because I've never
Just to
watched
survive
that
and
one,
repeat.
literally. So yeah, that was cool. But I think people are always so interested in this, and I would be as well. And it's so unique, and it's a sport where human performance comes under the car.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy,
So
isn't
it's
it?
car first and then the human, which doesn't happen anywhere else in the world in any
No.
sport. So that always makes me laugh. But the opportunity came by, and I was like, there's no way I can let this pass me by. So yeah, it's kind of it works out like maybe 1 to 2 days a month, split across pit stop and academy.
Hmm.
And yeah, I was literally there yesterday, which was super cool. Actually seeing them make the car.
Didn't get that, which again I imagine so surreal to be like this thing because the money and the time and sort of I'm not really big into F1. I've seen Drive to Survive and things, but the people like the ingenuity and things that go into it are absolutely just insane. Like they're
It's
all like fighting
crazy.
each other and stuff like so
Yeah,
like so mad
yeah.
about
It's such
it.
a selfish sport.
Yeah,
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 yeah. And some of the teams like hate each other and stuff. Like from like where like my position is, so the pit stop crew and the academy drivers have all got a performance coach. So basically, the pit stop crew, the pit stops aren't the best right now, which is obviously why they're a little bit lower than they want to be. So the aim is to give a lot of support to the pit stop crew in terms of training program, which is why they've got Liam. They've got that guy called Liam Hogan. Liam also assesses and looks at pit stop analysis. So they'll do pit stop practice in the factory, and they have analysis looking at the angle of someone putting the wheel on, taking the wheel off, and the level of detail
yeah,
is insane. So now they're being supported with like psychological support around pressure and just being able to move on from maybe a bad pit stop or
yeah,
something. And you've got a training program now, so they want them to be fitter, faster, healthier. And then that's where I kind of go hand in hand with the performance side, with just providing. And at the moment, it's just basic nutrition support because
yeah,
when you think of the pit stop crew, they are some of the best mechanics in the world. But it's like my uncle being working for Williams, who he might be 50, he might not be interested in nutrition, but then you've got someone that is 25, does triathlons, like loves training, wants to get stronger because he wants to be able to put the wheel on and off like better and more accurately. So there's such a wide
yeah,
variation
yeah.
of people, but it's just basic nutrition support at the moment, which is just cool.
Yeah, and that segues quite nicely because you just mentioned obviously two different demographics there, like the 50-year-old who isn't really interested and the
Yeah.
25-year-old who's a triathlete, and you also work with like general public as well, don't you? And sort of obviously you mentioned that about being a PT, that's sort of maybe like your origin story of getting into this through this, and how is that to sort of go from these high pressure elite environments to then working with someone who just wants to make maybe some better changes in their life. There's less pressure, maybe. How do you treat them differently, or do you?
Do you know what? I think I treat everyone like exactly the same. Like me providing support to, one of the Red Roses where where they need to increase their protein intake because we need to put mass on them. I use the exact same, conversations, methods, strategies to, Maureen, who wants to drop body fat and maintain her muscle mass and look better
Yeah,
naked. You know what I mean? It's just,
yeah, yeah,
it's at the end of the day, the athletes are still humans who are just very, very good at this sport.
yeah,
So I've learned at the very start, like never, like don't treat anyone any different. And I think everyone eats food, like everyone has an opinion on it, on needs educating in some way. And it actually all comes down to one of your like favorite topics to talk about is habit.
yeah,
Whether you're an athlete or whether you just want to go to the gym and be better, there's got to be a consistent habit change in some way, whether it's protein intake, whether it's uh, going to the gym.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but it's just that with the athletes, they have got the gym already programmed. Like
Ingrained.
that's their job. So that's not something that they need to put extra effort into, if that makes sense, because it's scheduled. Where people like us, we need to find time and make time for that training with all the other stuff that goes on.
Yeah, definitely. You give me the answer I'm sort of fishing for there because I think it's reassuring for people who probably will listen to this and be, just everyday people. It's nice to hear that athletes are no different to just the everyday person, and that it's just maybe priority shifts where people need to just focus on different things. It doesn't mean that we're all different just because someone's better at one thing or not. The foundations, like you've mentioned a lot of the time, are exactly the same. And you sort of mentioned there about, habits and things, and obviously the topic I love talking about. Another reason I got you on is to talk about like your habits and your sort of daily routines because again, we've talked about it there. You have probably one of the most mental schedules and busy lives ever, and you're always doing some like mad impressive shit, be that like rowing or marathon skis or whatever it is that you're doing. So, how just going into that, how do you structure your day just to start off? Like, is there a structure? Do you have routines in place for it?
Yeah, I'm very routine based. Like no matter where I am, whether I go on holiday, whether I've got a day the weekend or anything, there's got to be a
Yeah,
pre-planned routine or structure or leaving a base. Um, my do you want me to say like my typical day, like
yeah.
working?
But I'd love to have an insight of it.
Not as exciting as like a day like today, working from home. So I'll get up at 4:45, which is the same time like my wife gets up, Gem, because we both train before work. So kind of my time for me, and that's kind of I call it like my power hour, and like that's my selfish time. I don't have kids, so I can have this time.
Yeah,
Is 4:45 until like 7:30. So like I'll get up, do a bit of mobility, might have a snack if I've got a hard session. I'll train till about 7, and then it's like sort the breakfast and start to get ready for the day. And then up by 8:30, it's probably my most productive hours of anywhere
yeah, yeah,
between like 7 and 12. And then yeah, I think, and then one of the biggest things is writing a to-do list for the following day. Like it's probably a bit weird, but I get a little bit of anxiety if I don't know tomorrow,
yeah,
or if only I don't get the ideas out my head on paper for what tomorrow should or could look like. So I'll always, like, you can even see it now. So that is today's.
I love that.
So yeah, like podcasts, and I've got like a day of Red Roses work. So
Yeah,
um, within that day, I'll always get out for some kind of walk. I used to feel guilty about stuff like that when I was really busy, but I just think it's so important to just have that mental break and just get a bit of fresh
yeah,
air.
definitely.
And yeah, so that's kind of like my structure, and then I'll sort tea, and even with that, like I'm finding ways to be more efficient with not being in the kitchen, to be able to claw back more time to do work, which is, some may say that's a good thing, some may say that's a bad thing. So I'm like slow cooker's biggest fan at the moment.
Yeah,
But again, it's just kind of I need to be as efficient as possible when I'm because of the roles and a lot of the things that I am involved in. I can't waste days.
yeah, yeah. They've got to be as sort of scheduled and tight and efficient as possible.
Yeah, and even like when I go on, like when I was in Marbella, like I try and stay in the same routine. Obviously, I don't know what that schedule of the day looks like, but as long as I've got up early before anyone, trained, and I'm down for breakfast for before breakfast starts, then that schedule is a bit different because I was kind of parachuted in. But
Yeah,
like, say if I go on Camp with Roses, like if I need to get up at 4 o'clock to train, I'll do it so that I'm my best version of me for whatever happens during the rest of the day.
amazing. I love that insight, and it's really obviously it's just interesting to hear someone who's obviously a high performer in pretty much everything you do to sort of see them. And another question that just popped to mind, and I did write it down, but it just segued nicely. Is sort of what's the fuel? What's the motivator behind not just fucking seeing that alarm at 4:45, 4:45, and being like, "Fuck this today."
It's a really good question, and sometimes I struggle to answer it. And I think, what is my driver? I've got some like weird, like I don't want to be average.
Yeah,
Like I don't want to. I don't know. Like I want to like look back and think, wow, you actually worked your ass off.
yeah, yeah,
You might have failed at a few things, but you might have absolutely nailed like amazing opportunities and stuff like that. And I think I'm just a naturally motivated person. Like I don't know, I'm just like all in. Like with anything, I'm either all in or I'm not interested. I can't sit in the middle. Same with like sounds fun. Like if I'm going out for a drink,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going out.
yeah. It's all
I'm
or
not
nothing.
just having a few.
Yeah, 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 I get that.
Yeah, and like or I'm off. Like I went away a couple of weekends ago and didn't touch a drop. So I'm like all or nothing.
Yeah.
But I think the driver is to just see how far I can push myself, and I think the more I can challenge me and maybe lead by example for some people, I think I'd like to think it can have a positive impact on the people that are around.
Beautiful, mate. Like nothing is impossible because that's that thing that Graham
Yeah,
sent you before, and just sort of using it
it
and
lives rent free in my mind.
yeah, just ingrained onto the front of your skull. So you mentioned some things there before, like you have your to-do list. You get up, you have like your selfish time, which I love. I think that's a great expression because I think a lot of people can do with being more selfish in their
Mhm.
own lives and prioritize themselves. What are some of the non-negotiables that you have for your daily routine? I know you mentioned a few, but is there any more there, or you'd like to go in more depth about them?
Yeah. Sleep. Again, I'm standing here saying it because I don't have kids and stuff like that. But like, because we're up so early, like I know what my limit is, like in the day. Like I know that I need 7.5 hours sleep. Like realistically, like anything under 7, like it's not great. So like sleep is one of my non-negotiables that I can try and control. Um, and I know that like my cut off in the evening, like is I'll work till Jem comes home and I'm working from home. Like we'll have tea and realistically we'll both get back on our laptops, and then it's like cut off for maybe 8, which isn't the life that I want forever, but
Mm,
it's just like a temporary. But then we're asleep by 9,
mm,
at half 9, like 10
yeah,
o'clock's a
yeah.
late night. So a non-negotiable for me is sleep. Another non-negotiable for my daily routine is training in some capacity or moving. Could be like a big walk. Um, Another non-negotiable is just like having an intention for the day. Like I really struggle. It drives Gemma insane. Like insane at times. And I do apologize sometimes, but like even like I need to know. So it's half term next week for teachers and whatever. Gem's a teacher. Now, I obviously need to find time within my week to take at least a day off or half a day because I can't just work all week. It's not fair. So, but I need to know, okay, well, if it's this day, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Or like if we're going on holiday, I can't just like we get up, train, have breakfast, chill, but then I'm like, so what do we do now?
Nick,
Just
Nick's
have a
like that.
minute.
Yeah, Nick is
Yeah,
like
so
exactly like
I
that.
just need to be like, I
Yeah.
need to have an intent for the day. So if I know that it's going to be chill time tomorrow, for example, it's a weekend, I wish, but chill time, and then at 3 o'clock we're doing this, or at
Mm,
3 o'clock we're switching off. So it's just how my mind works. And if I don't have an intent, then I just don't feel like I can like get the most out of the day or get through the tasks that I need to get to.
yeah, yeah. That's so interesting to sort of see because obviously scheduling's a big thing now, isn't it? Like it's a bit of a hot topic and having that, so it's reassuring to hear it. I mean, I'm trying to get better with it. I mean, Google Calendar is probably one of the best things that anyone on the podcast has sort of like shown me to because that thing's chaos. I can only imagine what yours looks like. I mean, it's absolute fucking bedlam. There's colours and everything, just different blocks.
Oh,
But
well, do you know what? It's like, it's
it's
this.
this.
And then I've got like a normal, what is like a normal calendar on your phone? It's not Google Calendar, just like your software,
Yeah, yeah.
like a Samsung calendar. Then I've got Google Calendar. So I do actually need to merge the two because I'm treading on eggshells because something's going to go wrong. But I just think as long as I've got a piece of pen and paper, and if my phone breaks,
Yeah.
like, I can just always rely
You've
on
got
a
some
post.
old school tech there that keep you through. Yeah. Jen's probably going to hate me for this time about Google Calendar because you can invite people to things. Nick just invites me to stuff, and she's like, "Right, we're doing this at this time," and I'm like, "All right, yeah, sick. I'll accept that," and that's my day accounted for now. So yeah, don't tell Jem I suggested that, or she'll be sending me a
Okay.
message kicking off. But I mean, it's so sort of like again, I said it was interesting before, but it really is to just see that these are the things that are the foundation. You went back to big rocks of sort of nutrition and things, but like to see what how important scheduling is and stuff like sleep. I'm a terrible sleeper. I'm jealous that you can just like be like 8, 9, bang. So like Do you have like a routine with that? Is there something that you have? Is like sleep hygiene? That's another thing that comes up a lot lately.
Yeah. So I'll always like we won't take laptops to bed. Like it's always like okay, laptop off by a certain time. And we're usually not on after 8 o'clock. If we are, like it's something that is like just a
Important.
bit, yeah, last minute. And then it's more just like I'll take like my magnesium, like vitamin C before bed, and then it's like shower. Like when we get in bed, it's either like we'll actually have a chat and
Yeah.
like catch up on the day, and then when we argue who's going to turn the side lamp off. And then, but not in terms of sleep hygiene, I try not to. I'm not going to say I'm great at this. Like I do want to get better at it. I do go on my phone in bed, but I am hyper aware of it. But I think it doesn't stop me going to sleep. And I know it stops some people going to sleep. So I just want to get into a better habit of just putting it on charge and not touching it. But like, and you know what? Like sleep isn't like amazing all the time. There was not last night, the night before. I like struggle with anxiety sometimes, and I knew that I had like a day at Williams, then I had this podcast the next day, and then I had a whole day Red Roses work that I feel so not behind on, which
Yeah,
causes stress. I can't get asleep here. Gemma's asleep, so I just like switched the lights on my phone. I had to like type what was in my head in my notes, and
yeah.
then I fell asleep.
Oh well. Yeah, no, I'm gonna
Yeah.
try that. Not so much because I'm like that. Like again, I was saying to Nick last night. Like I had a shit night's sleep last night, and obviously Wigan lost, which is another story in itself. But like when I do these podcasts, and especially with people I know, I'm like, shit. Like this is, and I don't know why, because like if anything, it should be easy with people, but I'm always more sort of nervous and like
Mm.
anxious about it, and I feel like I don't know if you ever suffer from this, and it's something that I ask people a lot. But like, does ever imposter syndrome creep in or things like that?
Yeah, like 100%. Like I like think, especially with like the F1 racing stuff and things like that, and how I didn't, I'm not a lover of the sport. Like, and I feel like, oh, I actually don't know enough to be here. And I think I just, yeah, I do suffer with the imposter syndrome, and I think it impacts confidence at times. So, but I think it is just a process of just like continuing to turn up and do the reps and just put yourself in them uncomfortable situations. Like it's the only way imposter syndrome kind of
Yeah, because
goes away.
it becomes a fuel, doesn't it? Eventually, you sort of like.
Mhm.
For me, I have this mentality with it now is that I can be sort of a prisoner of it, or and let it prove me right. That it was all an imposter all along and just fucking fade away, or you can just like channel into it and be like, right, well, fuck this, I'm going to prove that it's not
Yeah,
this thing. So, again, reassuring to it, obviously, someone of like your amazing standards and where you are and doing these massive opportunities that it still sort of, creeps in day to day. And you mentioned there about, writing it down, what's in your head, sleeping, exercise. Is there any sort of other things that you prioritize with self care per se? Because they're saying like things that are, you have like maybe a self care kit that I don't know if people are conscious of it sometimes, but you just listed a few there. And is there anything else that you do that to sort of, bring yourself down, relax yourself,
hmm
or give yourself that motivation to like, right, wipe it clean and go again?
yeah. Do you know, like, yeah, I think like self care. It might sound like a bit of a strange answer, but I see like self care as me booking like a Wednesday afternoon from like I don't know 1:30 till 6 to see my niece and nephew. Like that's my at the time. But obviously when I'm on camp, it's hard because I can't come home. But that's like my self care to know that like because I think if I let that slip, then how do you ever claw that back? Because like time is precious. So that's kind of one of my self care, and I know that like running business and having roles and just life, isn't it? Like it's not easy, and like trying to be a wife, trying to be a friend, and it's like okay, I need to find self care where I can try and switch off with Jem and like book a trip or so like next week we're going like to a spa and then we're staying over, and that's like would I choose to do a spa and stay over? Like probably not. Probably choose to go and trail run or
Yeah, yeah.
something
A
stupid. But
marathon ski or something like that.
yeah, pass some time. But I'm like, no, like those moments you need to like find them within a busy schedule. Because if it's important to you, you'll find the time. Like I always say that. But I think sometimes you need someone to sense check it. Okay, we've got to slow down a minute. So that's kind of like my self care to make sure that if it's once a month, there's something booked in with Gem, or we're doing something to just like, yeah, not be in that rat race of just, yeah, hamster wheel.
Yeah, avoiding that burnout and that sort of like getting consumed by the grind culture mentality of like, I should be fucking nailing myself constantly.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's tough at times because when you're on camp, like it's intense. Like you've got 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks of with the same people. Yes, you can maybe come home once or twice, but that's like I like look at my like year now and be like, March, April is intense. May, I'm off from Roses, not off from life. But
Yeah,
so I'm like, okay, well that's intense, and then May I can breathe, and then like there's a couple of months where it's so it looks then it's July. This year it's June, July, August, September, World Cup. Like that's 4 months, which is probably the most. It's going to be the most intense 4 months probably ever. But then I've got October, November, December to breathe.
yeah.
So I like try and like break the year out into
Mm.
segments.
It's really not the stick in it. It's like think of
Yeah,
the end goal, not like sort of what's getting you there. And that is that what gets you
yeah,
through that break.
yeah. And self care within that is so important. Like
Mm.
you'll be I'm not playing a violin at all. Like I chose this life and chose these like this opportunity. But um, like when I'm on camp, yes, I'm Red Roses nutritionist and I'm all in. But I also just can't disregard other roles and other jobs. So I have to get up at 4 to do work, to train, to do work, to then turn up for Roses, to just focus on Roses. Then it's like, okay, well, in the evening when everyone is probably going to bed, it's like, can I do another half an hour of something? And I always say to people, like, some days you could move a mountain, some days you could move a pebble. And that's kind of the mentality that I have on those busy periods of just, it's not going to be, groundbreaking every day.
Yeah. Even if it's just
That's all.
a percentile, even if it's just fractional of
Yeah.
progress, just take that as the
Yeah.
win.
You could be just putting a post on social media. That's
Yeah,
today and be at peace with it. But then the next day it could be you've got through 2 hours of work and
yeah.
that's
Them social
okay.
media posts are a ball ache at the best of time. So
Oh,
they are, yeah,
I feel
that's
your pain.
yeah, they're just carnage.
I tell you what I do love at the
But
minute, Choppity. Have you used Choppity? So I used to use Captions or CapCut, can't remember.
yeah,
And I'm terrible on it. Um, but I don't watch Dragon's Den. I haven't for a while. But these people were on Dragon's Den apparently, and they're called Choppity, and it's like a captions type software, but it's so easy. Like literally, you can get a little free trial, and it'll make uploading things like this and other bits. So I've
yeah.
only done the basics, and I'm not really interested in going any higher at the minute because it's doing a job. In terms of like time saving and efficiency, I think it's really good, and it's
Well,
quite cheap as well.
you're going to be made up when I tell you that the software that cuts the entire podcast into like 30 different little reels that I'll send you. So there's some content sorted. But before we wrap it up, there's two questions that I always ask people. The first one is, are there three habits that you would recommend to the everyday person, anyone in your field, to improve their everyday life that you do? What would the three be and why?
Ooh, that is a very good question. Move, doesn't matter what type, walk, gym, whatever. Plan, have an intent for the day. It could be 2 things on your list, it could be 10. Just have some kind of intention. And the third
Third
one's
one
quite tough.
always gets everyone, so don't worry about it. It's the one that stumps people every time.
Say the question again.
So, like, if you had three habits that you do and you could recommend them to the everyday person or anyone in your field to improve their life, what would they be and why?
So the last one, I would just say keep in touch with friends and family, whether it's just a quick voice note or a stupid meme or something you've seen on, TikTok or
Yeah,
that you find funny. Just try and keep in touch. Otherwise, you can go such long periods of time
yeah.
just work mode.
It's very easy to go ghost when you're doing things like this, isn't it? And just become consumed by the magnitude of what you think is your responsibility of like the social media, the reaching out, the content creation, the doing this. So yeah, I can. That's a great one, especially from anyone who's sort of doing, as much as we
One
are.
man hands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. As
exactly.
much as we are like, entities a part of what like we're doing, we're very similar in sort of the
Yeah.
products and you trying to get out. But yeah, they're brilliant. Mate. The last one, the almost turn in the road, is that there's one habit that you used to do or have never done and you want to do. What would that habit or routine be and why?
Can it relate to like
It can be anything. Yeah, it doesn't. It can be whatever you think.
if this equates to an answer, I've wished I would have swam when I was younger and kept up swimming because now that I'm 34, like it actually does my head in that I'm not a great swimmer and I want to do an Ironman and I want to.
I knew you was gonna say that. I
I
fucking knew you
know.
was gonna say that. I said when you said swimming, I
I'm
was like,
gonna
I
bite.
bet she says Iron Man. I bet she says fucking Iron Man.
And I just think I can't swim properly and I'm in my own way because I'm like, oh, I'd have to spend a year in the pool because I can't
Yeah,
swim.
yeah, yeah.
That's just my excuse. So yeah, whether that like amounts to an answer, I just wish I could
No, makes
swim and I
perfect
wish that
sense.
was like a habit, like I can just go out and have a run. And I wish I could just go and
Yeah.
swim.
I think that's the first practical one I've ever had, and I love that because it's different. So yeah, that is more than acceptable. We'll wrap it up now. Well, after this, people won't see it, but you can stay behind and we'll have a little chat off there. But yeah, let people know where they can find you, how they can contact you, all the different amazing things you've got going on. Just a bit of a shameless plug for you before we finish.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Committed Nutrition Ltd and also at Female Football Nutrition as well, which is the kind of other project that we've got going on at the moment. And yeah, that's how you contact. And yeah, I think if you always drop me DM, there's no point me giving me email address because if you drop me DM, I'll just always reply anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining your time in your schedule. I appreciate it a lot.
You're very, very welcome.